very much for being here. It is a miserable night outside tonight, but I'm really hoping that we can create our own sunshine here this evening as we all fall a little bit more in love with the future, hopefully. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Fiona. I am Chair and Leader of Fayon Council, and I'm also the Lead Councillor for Climate and Ecological Emergency. And I'm just really thrilled that we are able to host tonight's event with Hopkins and Dixon. In my role as leader, I spend a lot of time thinking about how we can do things differently. The challenges that we currently face as a community, from climate change to social and economic inequality to increasing need alongside decreasing resources, are so complex and knotty that the old ways of doing things just simply aren't working anymore. We really do need fresh ideas, new approaches, and willingness to experiment and imagine new possibilities. And that is exactly what Hopkins' new book is about. I think there might be a photo of it, but there isn't. How to fall in love with the future. It isn't just about imagining a better world though, it's also about giving ourselves permission to inhabit that future, to see it vividly, and to start taking the steps we need to make it real. His work is rooted in creativity, in collaboration, hope, and courage to think differently, all of which we are going to need if we're to find a more hopeful future for our town. Rob has very kindly spent the day here in Frome leading the workshop. I was only able to join for the afternoon, but the main part of the afternoon session was about opening up our imaginations and asking some really bold what-if questions. I spoke with quite a few people throughout the day, and many said the same thing as what I was feeling, which was that the future currently feels really heavy right now, and that today was an antidote to that, and it was exactly what they needed. So thank you to Rob for hosting that as well. Rob will be in conversation this evening with Dixon, who has very recently moved to Frome from Coventry and London. Fayon is a broadcaster and motivational speaker and a former contributor to BBC Radio London and Talk Radio with a real passion for imagination. So tonight, I hope that you will leave feeling inspired to think boldly about our future, of our town, of our community and of ourselves, and I hope that you enjoy what promises to be a really fascinating conversation. So please join me in giving a very warm welcome, first of all, to Fayon Dixon.
Hello, Frome! Okay, right, before we get started, we're going to have to do something active. Yes, you're going to get involved in a little activity with me. So, I thought it would be really nice to warm up the crowd before we get here. Some of you are looking like, what's she going to do with that? So, in my hand, I have my electric toothbrush. And what I would love you to do is turn to the person next to you, and you've literally got 2 minutes, a minute each. I'll tell you when to swap over, but you've got a minute each to say what you could do differently with this electric toothbrush. Easy, not past 9 o'clock yet. What could you do with this electric toothbrush to make the future better? To reimagine the use of this electric toothbrush. So, turn to the person next to you. You've got a minute to think of as many things as possible. Keep a tally, and we're going to see who's got the most. On your marks, get set, go! 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, we are done with that. All right then, so put your hands up if you got more than 5. More than 5. I had a lot of laughing going on, so I'm thinking, is there any work going on? Okay, did anybody get more than 10? Ooh, hands up still at the back. Ooh, hang on. 7, more than 7. You got 7. Anybody else? How many did you get? 7. 7 as well. Anybody get more than 7? 8. Can I get 8? 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 Can I get 9? Can I get 9? Right, you're going to have to get in the car park and tussle it out. Right, let's hear some of the suggestions, shall we? Who are you working with? Fantastic. Okay, can you give us some suggestions? Do we have a microphone handy? Not ready? Shout up for us. Oh, here we go. Lovely, the mic's ready. I thought I was going to have to give you the toothbrush then.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be on. Oh, right, try again.
I've got an loud voice.
Excellent.
So, first of all, attracting bees.
Ooh, good. Very good.
Cleaning graffiti.
Very nice.
Fertilising tomatoes.
Okay.
A dibber for planting things.
Dibber. Good one.
Oh yeah, separating out seeds by vibrating them so they're different sizes.
Very good.
And filling potholes. Dubious.
Okay, love it, love it. The people at the back who also got 7, can we get the microphone to them, please? Okay, and then you lot are going to be doing the choices of who you think have got the best. So, okay, yes, please.
Well, we a different type of brush, an artist medium, painting.
Very good.
Vibration power for a sieve. We said those things.
I have to remember them. We said loads of things. Anything else? And in the interest of time, we'll collect yours later. Give it up for this team right here. Fabulous. All right, I have to make sure that my toothbrush and I make it home together. A dibber, I'm loving that. Thank you very much. So you basically get bragging rights. There are no prizes. Okay. It's lovely to be here. It really and truly is. So I was at work today, very, very, very busy, but I knew that the workshop was happening, and I'm like, I have got to get as much work done as I can. So I started nice and early, and then I had my cancelled appointment at 12 o'clock. I'm like, get in. So I got on my bike, zoomed down the road, and I joined. The room was packed with people, loads of activities. And I managed to get in just in time for lunch, which was nice. I also had it for my dinner because I took some back with me. Thanks for that. And I got involved in a working workshop. Anybody here from my group who was in the workshop? Hello. We had so much fun today, just bouncing ideas off each other. Rob set us off into the rain. What a guy. And we had to come up with loads of lovely ideas with what if at the beginning. Now, I'm still buzzing, as you can see, from that interaction. It was brilliant to just speak with people about what we can do here in Frome and what we're already doing but can build on. So, for Frome, this isn't your first rodeo, though, at this kind of work. In 2010, you had something similar happen and you reimagined what life would be like in 2050. So we need to think a little bit differently now, because already we've got the share shop, we've got the great stuff that goes on around the railway station. You've done Everyone Needs Pocket, the community fridge. I got myself a nice cabbage there last week, actually. You know, you've done your fair share of pioneering. You're standing on the shoulders of some amazing people with amazing ideas, but we want to know how we can get started, maintain the energy, and keep it going, and of course, attract funding. So we've got somebody here who's been around the world and spoken to so many people who are doing it. Yes, actually making it happen. I've read the book, I've got the evidence. So let's welcome to the stage, please, Rob Hopkins.
God, you feel miles away.
Oh, you are? You're too far from me.
Yeah, it's a bit, yeah.
But it's okay, we'll make it work, we'll make it work. So, practical advice and inspiration, and hopefully finding out where all the money is so that we can fulfill our dreams for free.
I can't guarantee anything useful on that, I'm afraid.
Okay, we're not going to hold you to anything. But for some people in the room, they've already met Rob, they know about his work that he's been doing in transition and time travelling and connecting with people with regard to their imagination. But I want to start at the beginning, if you don't mind. Let's just find out a little bit about you. I know that you were born in 1968, I know that you were, you brought up in the 70s. What a time. Just off the back of the moon landing, everybody was practically wearing big shoulders and funky suits. We all thought we were going to the moon. I certainly did. But can I ask you, Rob, because the book, How to Fall in Love with the Future, a time traveller's guide to a better future. What a title. So I'm going to ask you first of all, what was your first love?
What or who?
Either, I don't mind.
I think we were talking about this earlier, and I was thinking I could have had some really sort of predictable kind of thing. Well, it was nature, and I spent all my childhood rolling around in the mud, which is kind of true. But I think actually the first thing that I remember being like, oh, was was hearing A Day in the Life by the Beatles on my dad's record player when I was about 5 or something. And I think it was the first time that just the kind of the power of music sort of hit me. And it's one of the lovely things about being a parent, actually, has been seeing with my kids. I remember one of my kids when he was about 14 coming down and said, "Dad, have you ever heard A Day in the Life by the Beatles? I just heard it, it's amazing." I'm like, yes, son, yes, son. So I think it was probably music. Yeah. And music has always been a massive, massive thing for me ever since. Yeah. Excellent.
And we hear in the book and in your podcast as well about Mr. Kit, who you go off and do lots of travelling with, and he's like your collaborator. But, as a young Rob, who were you collaborating with? Were you a child of great imagination and sort of always thinking about what was going on in the future? I mean, did you keep it all to yourself, or did you tell anyone?
I think I was probably quite, not solitary, but I was a bit of a loner, I think. But I used to read lots, and I used to write little storybooks about imaginary worlds and stuff like that, and invent. I drew. I was one of those kids who was sort of just always doing kind of creative things. Yeah. But I don't think I was that sociable until I was like in my teens, I suppose, really.
Okay, so do you remember the moment when you started turning your sort of imagination and the writing and the reading into passion?
I think probably yeah, that's a tricky one. I think it was probably when I found out about permaculture when I was about 22, and I discovered permaculture, and I'd been travelling in Pakistan with this guy who was from Australia and who was really into permaculture. I had no idea what permaculture was, and we travelled up through Pakistan, and he lived in Australia. He was very into permaculture, and he kept writing letters back to the permaculture newsletter in the town where he lived. So we'd arrive then we arrived into the Hunza Valley, which is the closest thing to paradise that I've ever seen in my life. And it's like all on this sort of mountainside, and it's all in terraces, and this incredible sophisticated irrigation system that brings the water down from the glacier, and you put a slate there and it sends it down to there. And it was all apricot trees with underplanting, with barley, and all the apricots drying on the roof. And I was just like, oh, this is. There was a line I read in a book at the time that I've never been able to find since, which was, "If on earth there is a garden of bliss, it is this, it is this, it is this." If anyone knows where that comes from, do come and tell me afterwards. Never been able to find. But when I was there, I was like, I'm in the garden of bliss. And this guy, Chris, who I was travelling with, who was knew about permaculture, he was like, kept getting really excited and talking about permaculture. When I got back to England from that trip, a friend of mine gave me a copy of Bill Mollison's big permaculture designer's manual and said, "I think you might like this." And I opened it, and the first chapter was about earth repair, this concept of earth repair. And I was like, wow, someone's written a book. I was reading all these books about how everything was going to hell in a handcart and how all these things that were going wrong. And then here was a book about earth repair and how to put it back together again. And that was it. I was hooked. And then I joined the permaculture group in my town and started writing things for their newsletter. And that was the first time I was writing things with that kind of fire in my belly, really.
Amazing. And so soon after, transition sort of came to the fore. I mean, how do you actually start it? You have the idea in your mind, You've got some, you know, wonderful examples that you've just put together there and told us about. But how do you start Transition Town? Because it's not just in Totnes, is it?
Do you mean how did we start it, or how does one start it if one?
How did you get about starting it?
So I'd been living in Ireland in the southwest in a place called Kinsale, and I had set up the first 2-year full-time permaculture course in the world in this little quirky little college in the Irish education system that tended to be quite conservative, and the guy who was the principal of this college was close to retirement and a real maverick, and he was really like, he was just like really into new ideas and people doing things differently. And my friend taught drama there, and she said, and I'd been looking for somewhere where I might be able to teach along the permaculture course. So I went to see him and I explained it to him, and he said, yeah, we'll do that. He said, how many people do you think we could get? He said, we'd need 14 for it to run. I said, I think we can do that. The first year we had 25. Every year after that it was full, 40 people before any of the other ones even got any bookings in. And in the last year that I was teaching that course, we did a project with the students, because at that time there was lots and lots of reading, lots about climate change was really coming to the fore at that point. This is like 2004, 2005. Lots of stuff about energy security and issues around that. And I set the second year students this project where I said, okay, I want you to design a pathway over 20 years where at the end of it, Kinsale doesn't use any oil and gas and is a better, happier, more flourishing place than it was at the beginning. And I put them into pairs, right? You two are doing energy, you two are doing tourism, you two are doing education. And then the course was basically, the whole year was me taking them to see different projects that gave them ideas and finding ideas to feed into that process. It was really interesting. And then at the end, in May, they all submitted their projects. I was like, these are amazing, really fascinating. And we do this, then we do that, and then we do that. And so I knew I was going to be moving back here. So I edited them all together in a little book. I wrote a little introduction. We called it the Kinsale Energy Descent Action Plan. And we printed a few copies, and they all went very quickly. We put it online for people to download, and it got downloaded thousands and thousands and thousands of times. And people were putting comments going, this is the piece we've been waiting for. No one's done this before. No one's tried to say, maybe we could plan for this. Maybe we could design the descent down from the energy peak in a way that we flourish as we do so, and we end up in a better place. So when I arrived into Totnes in 2005, I didn't know anybody. All I had was this thing in my hand and this belief that there's more in this. We haven't got to the bottom of this. There's something in here that needs further exploration. And like all great sort of collaborations, musical or whatever, I just started meeting people in Totnes who were like, oh yeah, I've heard of that. That's great. And yeah, and they all brought a different piece of the puzzle. So one person came very much from a sort of organising big education around this stuff. There were two amazing women who came from very much from a sort of eco-feminist psychology background, who designed a whole aspect to it that was called inner transition, where they said, you know, you can't do this without also focusing on like how we do this matters as much as what we do. And if you want this thing to still be here in 20 years, you need to design in how we work together, how we manage conflicts, how we run meetings. This is a marathon, not a sprint. We need to design that in. I think it's one of the core reasons why transition still exists. So it came out of this sort of coalition of people coming together and just finding they could work together, and just sometimes it's like the kind of, what would you call it, like the muse or the spirit sort of flows through the work you're doing somehow, and it all is just like a complete whirlwind, and the serendipity comes in, and you think, what we really need now is someone who, I can, and there was a lot of that, and so it was a kind of a whirlwind really. And then within Totnes, you know, we started in September 2006, and by April 2007, we were getting emails from people in Mongolia and Iran and New Zealand saying, what is this? It's fantastic. How do we do it? And we couldn't cope because we were just trying to do it in Totnes. So that's when we set up Transition Network, which still exists now, Transition Network International, which supports this movement as it goes out and spreads in different places.
It's just brilliant, and it gives us so much hope, doesn't it? To know that when you have an idea, there's someone on the other side of the planet that is like thinking the same. I've lived in Brixton, born in Coventry, lived in Coventry for many years. and then lived in London for a long time, and now I'm here. And I thought it was great when they thought of Brixton Pound. Yeah. Did anybody remember or hear about Brixton Pound? Right, so we're going back to 2007, I think it was, something
That was
like that.
there was the £10 note of the Brixton pounds.
Yeah.
Because I went to the launch of the very first ones when they had Olive Morris on the £1 note and Vincent van Gogh on the £10 note. Who knew Vincent van Gogh lived in Brixton?
I know. He had a house there.
He had a house. Whether he stayed in a room in a house. But so they had the first and then the second issue of notes they did when they had David Bowie on the £10 note. Has everyone seen the £10 note with David Bowie? It looks beautiful. Look it up. It's like if the transition movement has a banner, it's the £10 note with David Bowie on it.
That
really
is it.
Beautiful.
And I'd been living in Brixton at that time for 10 years or so, and this pound came out and we all rushed out to get our pounds and we started spending them locally, and it was just the best thing. And there's still about 250 businesses in Brixton that still accept them. However, it died off after a while. So I was going to ask you about momentum and how when an idea comes together that is so fantastic, how do you keep it going? How do you pull in the right resources? Who are the players? Who are the movers and the shakers? And where does the funding come from? We want to know about the funding from what you have seen,
I think so. So at its kind of peak, I think there were like 8 or 9 experiments, like local currency. Was there ever one? Was there a Froome pound? No.
Yes.
So there was Totnes and Stroud, Lewis, sorry, Gloucester, okay, and Bristol was the biggest one. Bristol was the place where they really got it
behind it, yeah.
Like so in Bristol you could pay your council tax with Bristol pounds, you could pay your business rates with Bristol pounds. The first mayor of Bristol took his full salary in Bristol pounds.
Wow.
You could spend them on train tickets, on your energy bills. It was a phenomenal thing. I think what happened with all of them was that basically plastic took over, and there were shops who said, well, we don't take any cash of any sort, local or otherwise. We just don't take any of it. I remember that when we started the Totnes pound, it was such a mad thing to do. Like I went into this building on the high street in Totnes where my friend had a film company. It was called The Bank, the old bank in Totnes. And on the wall they had this framed 1810 banknote from the Bank of Totnes. The town had its own bank that issued legally with this beautiful swirly copper plate handwriting. It said £1 issued by the Bank of Totnes. And I remember thinking, what would happen if we made some new ones? Like, will the Queen come round and chuck bricks through my window or set her corgis onto me or something? Like, what's going to happen? And so we just did it, and we printed 300, and it was an experiment for 6 months, and people really liked it. And then we had a £1 note, and then for a while there was Totnes, there was Lewis. Lewis did a £1 note, which was the biggest currency launch in Britain since the 1800s or something. And then they were all kind of under the radar. And then when Bristol said they were going to do one, the Bank of England rang them up and said, excuse me, I think you need to come in and have a little chat. And so they went and had this conversation with the Bank of England, and the Bank of England wrote this report, this paper, which was their official position on local currencies, which was, yeah, they're fine. As long as you don't put the Queen on them and pretend that they're sterling, then that's fine, knock yourselves out. Yeah, I think they all had that sort of curve in about 2019, late 2018. So with the Totnes one, we could see the decline in use. And that was partly, I think, just because no one was using cash anymore, but also because it relied on a small group of really committed volunteers who were just getting really tired, I think. And so rather than just letting it sort of go, we had a big event that we called the celebration of the life and times of the Totnes pound. And we had a big party, and we told all these stories about all the amazing things that happened. So I think, projects also, they have a life. And it's kind of okay sometimes to say, okay,
let it go.
Let it go. That we had a Totnes pound for 11 years, and we had a £21 note just because we loved when people came and said, why have you got a £21 note? And we could say, well, why not?
Because.
Why not? And actually, there was a French film called Tomorrow, which some of you might have seen. Came out in about 2015. And in that film, I hold up a £21 note and I say, people say, why do you have a £21 note? And I say, why not? And that film was the most astonishing, unimaginable phenomenon in France. It showed in mainstream cinemas for like 6 months and was full every night. It showed in boardrooms, in universities, everywhere. And now in France, although none of those original British experiments really exist anymore, in France there's 83 local currencies, and they are all across the country, and they've all picked up that kind of quirky thing of having strange denominations.
Yeah.
So sometimes they take the number of the département, like France is divided into départements. So one of them has a 54 note, because that's the département number. One place I went has a 13 note, and I was in Liège a while ago. They have a currency called the Valeureux, and the Valeureux has a 0 note. I said,
how can you spend it?
I said, why do you have a 0 note? And they said, well, you know, sometimes someone does something really nice for you and you want to give them a token of your appreciation, but you don't want to put a number on it. It's a bit mercenary.
Nice.
But you want to give them something and you say thank you and pass it on to somebody else. I thought it was beautiful. So there's a kind of a creativity and a playfulness. And after COVID, what was really interesting was there were 2 places that I heard of. One was Charleroi in Belgium, where the municipality bought €2 million worth of local currency to put back into the local economy, to distribute among people, to invest back into the local economy in a way that benefited local businesses. It was genius.
Yeah.
And then in Grand Avignon, in the south of France, the municipality there had a big campaign where they very visibly backed the local currency and got behind it. So, you know, there's, I think all of the thing with momentum is you have to roll where the energy is. Because most of the work that we do in transition, most of the work that many of you do in this community, we're doing as volunteers, right? We don't get paid. Sometimes some people get paid. It's not a great path to wealth and great fate, great fortune, but we do it because we believe in it. And those projects are driven by the passion of what people care about. But people move away and things change and energies change. And so sometimes it's a part of the art of this, I think, is knowing when to let things go.
Right.
That's something I'm not very good at because I'm a stubborn so-and-so.
Right.
Yeah.
So you mentioned and started talking about volunteers, and then you started talking about films and stuff like that. I'm like, oh my God, I got something to ask you. But going back to volunteers, because, yeah, that's what makes the wheel turn. And you're talking about lifespan. And I was listening to one of your podcasts, and over here about the book, but I was listening to one of your podcasts, and you were talking about behind Tooting Broadway, because I only lived up the road in Brixton, where they turned the really ugly bus terminus into a spectacular place where there was grass, there were friends and gatherings and ice cream, and it was just like an amazing fun fair for the day, really. And like no cars, obviously, no buses, but it was just for one day, yeah?
Yeah, it's what in the workshop today, those who did the workshop will know, it's what I call a pop-up tomorrow. So it was in Tooting in this area. So Tooting is a very, very busy high street, and there's not really anywhere that's like a people's place where people can gather. But they said, well, there's one place it could be, which is this bus turning circle just off the high street, which is normally just full of buses sitting there, idling their engines, waiting to be called off to go somewhere else. And so for one day, they got all the buses to go away. I think it cost 40 quid a bus or something. There was some calculation for what it would take to get them to go somewhere else. And for one day, they turned that area into what it would be like if it was the sort of village green of Tooting. And they put real turf down on the tarmac. It's amazing. I got to sit with my shoes and socks off with my feet on the green grass of Tooting on a Saturday afternoon. It was lovely. And and like you say, they had coffee and they had music and they had food and they had all sorts of stuff, and it was such a beautiful thing to be at and noticing how it worked, because at the beginning I was listening to conversations where people said, if this was our village green, and by the afternoon people were saying, when this is our village green. Yeah. It's like that opportunity to sort of rehearse the future, and it kind of starts to get into your bones, really, in that sense. That's kind of the idea of that sort of stuff.
this is it, because if something's in your brain and your brain gets it, then all of a sudden it starts turning it into what it could actually be.
Yeah.
And with volunteers, I mean, there's many people here in this room, I'm sure, who've got behind some of the projects that are already up and running in Froome, but it must be exhausting. And I heard the term for the first time, Froome fatigue, because there's only so much people can do. So I just wanted you to give us some more examples of places that have actually made that difference. One that I love the sound of and want to go to is the restaurant in Marseille that is solar powered, an actual restaurant that just runs on the sun. So can you give us some examples of some of your favourite ones that you've heard of and how you felt the volunteers coped through it all?
Well, so the restaurant in Marseille is more of a commercial thing, but that was, I happened to be in, I was doing a speaking tour in France and was in Marseille, and the organisers took us for lunch to this place on on the edge of Marseille that was like this scrubby field surrounded by houses and offices and stuff with a shipping container on it, and behind the shipping container was a big mirrored parabolic dish. And we went there for lunch, and then they were, the guy who owned it, who was called Pierre-André, came over and we got talking, and he explained that actually they cook using the heat from the sun. They catch the sun's energy, focus it into the back of the oven. They don't use any electricity or gas, they just cook using, so they have to keep turning it during the day, and it gets incredibly hot, this thing. And they made really nice food, and we ate the food. And so we'll talk a bit later about field recordings from the future, which is a project that I'm doing. But I asked him if I could do a little interview with him, because he said, well, we've actually got planning permission on here to build the most ecological restaurant in France, and we just found out last week we've got the funding to do it, and we start work in a few weeks. And so then I went back again 3 years later for the opening of the restaurant, and they've built this incredible timber frame restaurant with clay bricks and hemp and very ecological and beautiful space with these two huge mirrored dishes out the back that focus the sun. An amazing, amazing thing. So, but that's more of a commercial thing. I think often when we read about climate science, there's this term about positive feedbacks, and positive feedbacks are not very positive in climate science. If you're getting positive feedbacks, you're really in trouble. That's like, the ice melting makes the sea darker, so there's more heat, etc., etc. In some places, you really start to see a sort of a positive feedback happening in transition. So in Wellington, in Somerset, just over there, they've been doing this amazing work around planting food forests. And they started about 10 years ago on an allotment. A few of them had an allotment together. They planted fruit trees and bushes, started doing a little bit of agroforestry, forest garden type stuff. And then someone said, oh look, behind my house there's this like acre strip of land that's covered in rubbish and brambles. Maybe we could clear that and we could turn that into a forest garden. And so they all got lots of volunteers, and over a few weekends they came together, they did that, they cleared that. And then someone said, oh, there's this old mill that's awaiting redevelopment, and there's an 8-acre field around that. What could you do in there? They did a big community consultation. What could we do there? That's now being planted up. And then the council came to them and said, we've got this 64-acre strip around the town, and we want to make an ecological corridor. Could you help us coordinate that? And I keep thinking, God, if you go back in 10 years to Wellington, you'll have to sort of hack your way up the high street through the vines and all the sort of fruits and everything. So, and they just have like a core number of people who just work really well together, and they've found their thing, that's their passion, and they're just tipping away doing that. And that's, I think, that the thing that I see in lots of different places with transition. It's that sort of people who just kind of keep going and have that sort of belief and kind of tenacity. Yeah. They just keep showing up. It's about we just keep showing up. I think.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Definitely, for those who keep showing up, thank you for keep doing that. But there are others that are sitting on the sidelines who just reap the benefits of all that hard work. I see a Froome, now I'm a Froomie, I see a Froome where, young people are invited to tell us their ideas and, carve a little space out in their time to get things done. For people that don't think they've got the right skills, I don't know anything about the environment, what can I do? I think there's a place for everyone. So how do we, in your experience, how do we get those involved without making them think too hard about, oh, the world's burning? You're just doing a little bit to make the place better for the future. How do you think we could do that?
I mean, the first thing to say is it's I'm not gonna for a moment say it's really, really easy, and to sort of make it be like, you know, it is a struggle, and it's so if people are trying to do that and struggling with it, that's because it's not easy to do, but it's something that has to be very conscious. I think there's an amazing woman, some of you may know, called Ruth Bentovim, who lives in Totnes, who is one of the best sort of practitioners of community art stuff that I know, and she developed this. She runs a training called The Art of Invitation, which is a 2-day course exactly about how to do that, how to design things that invite people to step in a way that doesn't feel like you're necessarily stepping in. Okay. So one of the first things that they did were what were called, she used to run a company called Encounters, and they used to do these things called Encounters shops. So they would take over an empty shop on a high street, and they used to call it a space with nothing for sale but lots on offer. And it was this very gentle sort of consultation with really accessible materials that was about, what do you love about this place? Where's the dark in this place? What are your dreams for this place? You know, so there's ways of that. And when I look at Tooting, for example, in London, which for me is one of the best transition groups in terms of doing that kind of work, they recently did Ruth developed this amazing practice called Town Anywhere, which is this, which we talked about today, which is this amazing practice where you bring together between 30 and 400 people, big space like this, and you imagine the future that you most want to see, and then you literally build that future with big cardboard boxes and bamboo sticks and sticky tape, and you inhabit it and you trade in it, and it's a magical thing to be with 300 adults in a world that you've imagined and built together. Is one of the most profound, magical things. She calls it rehearsing the future. And they did it in Tooting recently, and in Tooting, since the beginning, one of the first things they did was a thing they called the Earth Talk Walk, where they went and they carried this big book they had made, and they went to visit all of the different places of worship in Tooting to ask the priest, the imam, the rabbi, how do you talk about care for this planet in your tradition? What are the teachings from your tradition about how to do that? And that built a lot of connections that have really, really stood them in good stead. And they do lots of real deep kind of networking within that community. So you see then, when they did Town Anywhere, the real kind of diversity of Tooting was in the room for that practice. And then that's what makes activities like that so rich and vibrant in terms of imagination. Wow, so it's kind of, it's really not easy, but it requires dedication and some skills, and there are some people who are brilliant practitioners of that, and I would really recommend Ruth, the Art of Invitation training. I know she's teaching it at Hawkwood House near Stroud in November, and I really, really recommend it.
That's good to know. I mean, you're right. I mean, you said there were like 200, 300 people all getting together, building a town. You know, I was with 6 other people, strangers that I'd not met, apart from Sue, because I know Sue now. But I was with 6 people I didn't know this afternoon for 40 minutes, and we came up with some amazing ideas and just lovely plans, and we were all just bouncing off each other, and what if this and what if that, and you know, I took everybody's emails. I've already said hi to everybody already.
They're all coming over for Christmas.
Yeah, literally, you know. And, you know, a couple of those ideas are goers. You know, they really are. We're going to open the floor for questions very, very soon, because I know some of you must be itching to ask questions. But got to talk more about the book. Your 6th book now. Yeah. It's your 6th book. How has this one been so different from number 1, the very first one that you did?
It's a different shape. The first one, the Transition Handbook, was a square book, because I had this. It's one of the lovely things about being with an independent publisher, was I went and I said, can it be square? Because I want it to be the same dimensions as the 7-inch single, because it's the great art form of the 20th century. And if you did that with Penguin, they'd go, what? No, of course not. And I was with Green Books at the time, and they were like, yeah, of course we'll make a square book. And actually it was great, because it always stuck out of the bookshelves. It didn't fit. It sort of was quite a standout on the bookshelves. So this book was inspired by I saw in about 2021 a photograph of a young woman at a Black Lives Matter protest in Washington. She had this t-shirt on and it said, "I've been to the future, we won." And it gave me such goosebumps. I was like, ooh. And this was like very much, still in reading kind of endless climate books and articles about collapse and Extinction Rebellion, who I think are awesome and love to bits, but still very much had just that narrative of collapse and extinction all the time. And there was something so different and fresh, and it kind of got me. I've been to the future, we won. And I saw this about 4 weeks before there was a big event in London that was called the Big One, the Extinction Rebellion, the Big One. And they invited me to go up and speak. And I thought, okay, I want to do something different as a result of having seen that t-shirt and what it kind of did to me. So I went out and I bought this sort of white, I'll show you a little film in a minute actually of the talk that I did. But I went and gave this talk as if, I thought this is either going to be career suicide or this is going to be a really interesting moment. It's often those moments when you feel like that, the thing on the other side of that is really interesting. Yeah? So I went up and I gave this talk as if I've just come back from 2030. I just parked my time machine round the corner. It's on a meter, so I can't be very long. But oh my God, let me tell you about it. It was the 2030 that was a result of us doing everything we could have done. And the bicycle rush hours, and the rooftop farms and the urban agriculture, and there was this and there was that. And people told me they still had hangovers from the parties that marked when BP and Shell went out of business in 2028. And I went on like this for a few minutes. And it was like a sort of 1950s soapbox. I was stood up and everyone was stood around me. And after a few minutes, I said, the fact that I've just come back from there and that I've seen it and that I can stand here and tell you about it, it makes me feel really emotional being able to share with you kind of what's around the corner. We did it. And I looked around and on the faces of the people closest to me, there were tears on people's faces. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. This never happened before. So the book is then really kind of an exploration of like, what is it that happens when we do that? And so it then sent me off on this kind of journey of being around time travel as a tool for activists. And actually, this is a good moment because during that journey, I've had this young French-English film crew of these 3 guys who've been following me around, and they're making a film about time travel as a tool for activists. And they've made a little 1.5 little trailer, which kind of captures a bit the journey that I've been on, building up into the writing of this book. Would you like to see it?
Yes.
It's about a minute and a bit long, and it's really sweet and good fun. Roll the film, maestro.
I want to kind of go back a bit. When did you start telling people you were a time traveller?
You sound like my psychotherapist. There's so much in the narratives, I think, particularly within the environmental movement, where we talk about the time that we're in as being the end.
When you think about the future, how do you feel about the future?
Probably fairly pessimistic, really.
If we imagine we're going to make change on the scale we need to by just talking about extinction and collapse all the time, I think we're kind of missing a trick and we're doing something wrong.
So it's true that at the moment the future looks like a very bleak and difficult and horrible place. But in our time machine, we've built it to explore different possible futures that aren't utopias, aren't dystopias, but are the future that resulted from us doing absolutely everything we could possibly have done during these next 10 years. What would that be?
When you help people to time travel to the future in a way that feels exciting and they attach emotion to it, that imagining of the future becomes a memory. You create a memory of the future.
We have turned this room into a time portal.
I think when we step out of our time machine back into 2024, you look at the time that we're in now as the beginning of this great renaissance that happened.
Well, we're at Boomtown Festival. I'm here because they've asked me to go and speak to about 10,000 people.
It's looking like we only got one solution.
Warm rock the floor for Mr. Robert Hopkins.
Power
to the imagination.